determinations.
But are you bringing cases that you expect to lose?
Could you repeat
Are
that?
you bringing cases that you expect to lose?
Absolutely not.
Okay, well, your track record seems to suggest otherwise.
We have to move on to a wonkier subject, but one that I am very interested in. Guys, I often help you understand why you should be a wonk nerd like me. And you've come along with me on a few issues like certificate of need and things that I know were not really in the public in the past. I need you to pay attention to what's happening at the FTC. I know that the Federal Trade Commission is not a sexy agency. It's not one that most people usually pay that much attention to. You probably have no idea what it does, but it is tremendously powerful. This is a giant bureaucracy in DC. It has so much sway over the free market, over the economy, over private businesses. And up until very recently, it has traditionally been a pretty bipartisan agency. It has existed to allegedly protect capitalism, right? It wants to make sure that there is competition in the market, that there aren't monopolies, that businesses are treating consumers ethically, that people aren't getting railroaded by unfair business practices, things of that sort. I would argue that the FTC is probably not even needed in the first place because one true threat to capitalism is the government itself. So it's sort of a irony that it exists to protect capitalism. But that being said, it was not ever as big of a problem in our lifetimes as it has become under the current chair, who is named Lina Khan. She's one of the youngest bureaucrats in power. And if you're not familiar with her, I need to catch you up to speed. She just got absolutely grilled by Congress last week. I was giddy. When I tell you I had my Laffy Taffy, I was in my Uber to the airport and I was like live tweeting it. I was having a great time. I want to get it in front of you guys because actually some of the things they were questioning her about are really, really important. This woman is trying to use the FTC and the power of antitrust to remake the economy. And when I tell you she is an avowed socialist, I am not exaggerating. This woman hates capitalism and she's becoming a giant problem. So basically, she was nominated by President Joe Biden in 2021. She was confirmed by the Senate, including some Republicans, which I have a bone to pick about. And she was sworn in June 15th, 2021. So she's been in power like 2 years. Prior to her current appointment at the FTC, Khan was an associate professor at Columbia Law School, where she spent a lot of time opining against capitalism. Yeah. Khan spent much of her early career researching and writing on market consolidation at think tanks that included the New American Foundation and the Open Markets Institute. And during her tenure at Columbia Law School, she wrote on antitrust topics, and that became a big part of the national conversation. This is kind of how she rose to prominence. She published something in 2017 called Amazon's Antitrust Paradox. And that's when she was actually a law student at Yale, but it blew up while she was at Columbia Law School. And it won all kinds of awards, got national acclaim. And it basically is a challenge to the concept that antitrust law should focus on consumer welfare or companies' ability to offer goods at competitive prices. She thinks that that is a bad thing. And this is something that has been long entrenched in our legal system and in our the way we evaluate antitrust since like the 1980s. There was a conservative scholar named Robert Bork, and he basically said that in order for the government to have the power to use antitrust against a business, there should be a standard, right? They shouldn't be able to come in and basically bully companies and say, you regulate like this or you hire like this, and if you don't do it, then we're going to antitrust you. No, there needs to be some method by which they're allowed to bring these kinds of lawsuits. They're very expensive and costly to businesses. And so he developed something called the Consumer Welfare Standard that basically says the company has to be a monopoly, which is pretty rare. There's not that many monopolies out there. The company also has to have used its monopoly power, and it has to have used this monopoly power in a way that actually harms consumers, right? That's
the most important part, because sometimes monopolies or heavy market concentration emerge as a result for a reason. Like there's something called a natural monopoly, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's harming consumers, which is the only time a monopoly is bad is if it's exploiting that power to harm consumers. But people like Lina Khan just want to see any market concentration anywhere as inherently bad and break it up, regardless of whether consumers are being hurt.
She just hates corporations. She hates big business, and she doesn't care. And oftentimes, if you have a large corporation like Google or Amazon, it's because consumers are choosing to use them because they're offering a really good product at a great price. That is not indicative of a company being a problem in the market just because it's big. But she wants to get rid of all of that. She wants to flip it on its head. And she has long argued in her work that antitrust is the vehicle to do that. And so she has become one of the most, and this is not just me saying this, many are recognizing her as like one of the most extreme members of the Biden administration. In her infamous Yale Review article, she said that the FTC that she critiqued Amazon in it, and she said that the retailer keeps prices too low. And she wanted to use the FTC to come in and fix that. So she's been targeting Amazon for some time. She's been targeting Twitter. And another piece Khan published with the anti-capitalist outlet Law and Political Economy Project, she argues that antitrust must be reconfigured towards the redistribution of economic and political power and away from concerns regarding price. That's a Marxist publication that she has a long tie to, by the way. So essentially she's been arguing this for a while. She wants to use antitrust as the primary mode to bring about a socialist economy in America. She's trying to use it as a weapon against capitalism. And since she took over the FTC 2 years ago, everything has gone haywire. Morale's at an all-time low. Polling of the staff is like, we do not trust our leaders. All Republicans all Republicans have literally fled the premises and resigned. But there are no more Republicans left in power there. Noah Phillips resigned in October, and his fellow Republican Christine Wilson left in March after accusing Khan of abuse of power and publicly railing against her. So the agency is in chaos, and in the midst of all that, she is also 0 and 4 in merger trials. So she has been bringing antitrust lawsuits against various companies, which again cost taxpayers millions of dollars, cost the companies millions of dollars. And she is losing over and over and over in court because she has no business to be bringing these lawsuits. They are frivolous and they have no actual harm to consumers to be seen, but she is trying to, again, change legal precedent and weaponize the FTC against companies. So this is one of many reasons she got brought before Congress last week, and Republicans let her have it. I want to start with a clip from Kevin Kiley, who is a representative out of California. I have to be honest, I don't know a ton about Kevin Kiley's background, but he is increasingly becoming one of my favorite representatives to see grill somebody because he's who you want on your bench. So let's roll this clip of him questioning her.
You're 0 for 4 in merger trials. And so when I was trying to figure out what's going on here, I found maybe a clue in an article from the New York Times, December 7th, 2022, which reported comments you made at a conference where you said this. You said, if there's a law violation and agencies think that current law might make it difficult to reach, there's a huge benefit to still trying. She added that any courtroom losses would signal to Congress that lawmakers need to update antitrust laws to better suit the modern economy. I'm certainly not somebody who thinks that success is marked by a 100% court record, you said. So this raises the question, Chair Khan, are you losing on purpose?
Congressman, the key clause in the quote you mentioned was if there is a law violation. We only bring cases when the facts before us lead us to believe that there is a law violation under the existing laws. On the merger front, there are a whole set of cases where we've won, including in instances where the parties abandoned and walked away after
Okay, you're 0 for 4 in merger trials. So what did you mean when you said that any courtroom losses would signal to Congress that lawmakers need to update the antitrust laws? What does that mean?
So there is an institutional dialogue, right, between enforcers, between Congress, between the courts. There's a century worth of antitrust back and forth between the agencies, between Congress. This very committee in the 1950s determined that the agencies were not bringing the types of cases that Congress was worried about in terms of monopoly power.
Okay, but you're actually bringing the cases. You're losing because you don't have the authority that you want from Congress. So this is how you think you're going to persuade Congress to give you more authority, is by exceeding the authority that you now have?
Congressman, again, we only bring lawsuits where we believe there is a law violation, given the facts and the law at hand. We fight hard when we believe that there is a law violation, and unfortunately, things don't always go our way. But we make determinations.
But are you bringing cases that you expect to lose?
Could you repeat?
Are you bringing cases that you expect to lose?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Well, your track record seems to suggest otherwise.
Yeah, so it sure sounds to me like she's wasting tons of taxpayer money on lawsuits to harass big companies that she knows she has no chance of winning. So why? And she claims otherwise, but it just seems pretty clear.
She's full of it, right? I mean, she has unilaterally lost. She is getting her butt handed to her, and she wants to come in and act like, oopsie, we thought there really was a law violation. No, you didn't. You were trying to lose. She is well documented that she and people in her camp think that there is value in bringing antitrust lawsuits and losing them because, again, she wants to use it as a signal to Congress to update the antitrust laws and get rid of the consumer welfare standard on that side. If she can't win in court, she's trying to use the litigation process to pressure the legislative process. And that's actually a very common strategy that's used on any number of issues. But you have a lot of lawmakers who are playing right into this, right? And they're on the left and the right. When you see people like Josh Hawley running around wanting to change antitrust laws, signing on to bills with people like Amy Klobuchar, what they are trying to do is hand this woman specifically a ton more power over the free market. It makes absolutely no sense.
What could go wrong?
Yeah, what could possibly go wrong, Josh Hawley? I mean, it's just so moronic. I've often said, like, I don't think Josh Hawley's stupid, but he sure thinks you are, because this is not capitalism. This is not anybody who's a supporter of free market capitalism would be trying everything they can do to limit the FTC's budget right now and to protect the free market from this woman who is using her power in a way that's actually very vindictive against companies that she dislikes. And they actually got into that even more. We don't have time to get into it totally today, but in the hearing, they really got into how she's, been very punitive and gone after companies that she specifically dislikes, like Twitter, because of their political leanings. And so if you want to give this woman more power and the FTC more power, that's more of what you're going to get. She just lost another recent case that we did cover at Base Politics. I don't think we've discussed it on the show yet, but she went after Microsoft very recently. It was the FTC versus Microsoft and Activision Blizzard. And the FTC was arguing that Microsoft should not be able to acquire Activision Blizzard because it would reduce competition in the cloud-based gaming industry. Activision's top game is Call of Duty, which they license and make available on all gaming platforms, not just their own popular console, Xbox. But for whatever reason, Khan and her team seem to be very specifically concerned with another company's ability to access that game, which was Sony. And Stephen Kent, who is our friend at the Consumer Choice Center, he wrote for The Hill that Microsoft offered a number of long-term licensing deals during the process to display good faith and disinterest in cutting off Sony from its major titles. They said it's bad business for both parties. At the onset of the hearing, it was revealed via internal emails from within Sony, though, that the leader in video game consoles and chief advocate of the FTC's crusade against Microsoft didn't actually care that much about accessing Call of Duty. He actually wrote, this is the CEO, Jim Ryan of Sony, he actually said, I don't want a new Call of Duty deal. I just want to block your merger. And so this was a really weird case where...
hang on. Let me make sure I have this story right. So Microsoft wants to acquire Activision Blizzard, and Activision Blizzard owns Call of Duty, which is a super popular video game on Microsoft, but also on the other platforms. Now, the FTC is supposedly concerned that Microsoft, if it acquires Activision Blizzard, will only allow Call of Duty on Xbox, not on PlayStation or the other consoles, to give itself a competitive advantage. But they've already made a number of deals to Sony and other places saying that they will, and it would be bad business. And then actually turns out they don't actually care about Call of Duty. They just want to block the merger.
Sony did, right? So it appeared for all intents and purposes that the FTC was acting like the guard dog of Sony and going after another company, a competitor of Sony's, to try to block its growth, which is, again, just extremely corrupt, completely anti-capitalist. And there was no reason for them to allege in court that this was going to be a problem. They have always licensed Call of Duty. They were willing to set contracts and licensing agreements for like 10 years out. That wasn't good enough. So Lina Khan and the FTC spent millions of your tax dollars to pursue this bogus lawsuit and made Microsoft spend millions of dollars defending itself in court. So that's a huge waste just economically. And they lost. They lost resoundingly on this case. She's already tried to appeal it. I think she's going to lose again because contrary to what she said to Congress, there is no rule being broken. There is no consumer being harmed here. So anyways, this is one of the many things that she was asked about before Congress this week. I want to roll this clip.
Let's look more closely at the Activision decision, though. The court first noted that in an attempt to lower your burden, you essentially made up case law. You couldn't find anything actually that's the courts have provided in terms of precedent, so you cited to your own FTC decision as precedent. But irrespective of the legal standard, the court, you probably wouldn't have won under any standard because the court said this, that the FTC has not raised serious questions regarding whether the proposed merger is likely to substantially lessen competition. Not raised serious questions. The court also rejected not only rejected your assertion of a likely anti-competitive effect, but found just the opposite, that the record evidence points to more consumer access. So why should Americans have faith in your judgment when this Biden-appointed judge says you are so far off the mark?
Congressman, this matter is still pending before the FTC in administrative adjudication, so I'm just going to be limited in what I can say about the merits. Our complaint lays out the staff's view of what this merger would result in and why that would be a law violation.
But the judge roundly rejected it and said there weren't even serious questions, and now having lost, you're spending even more taxpayer money on an appeal that you're even less likely to win because the appeals court is going to defer to the trial court's findings of fact in this very fact-intensive matter. So why are you spending even more taxpayer resources pursuing this appeal?
So I can say, again, this was a staff recommendation. I can say it a general matter. Staff always looks closely at an opinion and looks at whether there are certain errors in law that they believe are worth appealing on. Those are, in general, the types of determinations that go into whether the FTC ends up appealing.
So I love that he points out that in order to try to bring this whole case, she cited herself and her own opinion at the FTC. That's just actually very funny. But I want to be clear, she hurried up and filed an appeal on this case, not because there's any shot in hell she's going to win, but because she didn't want to have to answer questions about it before Congress. And because it's still tied up in legal matters, she's able to give the kind of excuse she just gave to him.
Yeah, I'm going to start doing that next time I'm writing for an outlet and they ask me for a source. I'll just send them a tweet where I tweeted the same thing. And that's my precedent. That's my source. Yeah. Of course the FTC has the power to do this. We just did it earlier. Is essentially what I'm getting of her argument. But what I found really funny in this hearing, Hannah, was when one of the Democratic members essentially suggested that people are only criticizing her because they're all racist and she's a woman of color. Let's roll this last clip.
And I want to commend my colleagues on the other side of the aisle in the 118th Congress in diversifying the membership on their side of the aisle. But frankly, we haven't done enough. They have not done enough. They can't do enough at this point. And it reflects in the treatment that a witness such as yourself, Chair Khan, receives from this committee. When a witness comes in, sitting solo at that table in front of all of these interrogators, it's a daunting look. The American people can see it, and when we treat a witness who looks like you with the politics of personal destruction, and when we only attack witnesses who look like you with allegations of incompetence and a lack of ability to lead their agency, it's indicative of the need for this committee to reflect what the American people look like. And I want to appreciate you today for withstanding what you have had to endure thus far, and we've only begun.
So, Hannah, she's actually just stunning and brave, and the mean Republicans are all just racist. It's not because she's anti-capitalist. It's not because she keeps losing cases and harassing companies. It's not because she's wasting millions of dollars. It's just the mean, bad Republicans bullying a woman of color. That is so cringe and so baseless, but also I find it kind of condescending. Like, I would think it's a sign of respect to grill a woman of color appointee the same way you'd grill anyone else. They grill Fauci, and he's a white dude. Like, what do they expect? Kid gloves? Because that's what seems like the racist suggestion to me.
Well, actually, aside from the racism comment, though, this is exactly how you saw Democrats behave during hearings where Fauci was pushed to admit the truth on things, where they get up and they'd be like, how dare you be undermined? How dare you be disrespected? You're such a brave, once-in-a-lifetime leader. This is just so unfair to you. How dare anybody try to hold you accountable as one of the most powerful people in the country? Like, it's so weird. Like, the whole idea that somebody who is running one of the largest agencies in this country, who has hundreds of millions of tax dollars at her disposal, should not be made to answer for how she's using them, should not be held accountable for the decisions she's making, should not be called out for her unilateral failure over the past 2 years. I mean, even if you like Lina Khan, which would make you just completely off the tracks, but let's say you do, she's still been a unilateral failure. She has not been good at her job. She has not been using her resources effectively. Again, her agency is in complete mismanagement. It's falling apart. It's not going well, even if she's somebody that you like and want to see prevail. So this idea that she should be above reproach, or that it's so grotesque, or that she shouldn't have to endure these questions on her track record and answer questions about her job. Anybody who is an employee has to answer questions about their performance and their job. She's not above that because she's a person of color. I find that really insulting and just absolutely, I just thought it was so desperate. When I heard this come across, I had my AirPods in by this time in the hearing. I was kind of doing other stuff and I heard it and I was like, he did not just say that. I rewound it and I'm like, oh my gosh, he sure did. He just came in and tried to call Republicans racist for questioning this woman on her many failures. Yeah, how dare they? This is just, is bottom of the barrel. It really is such a bad look. And just like the Fauci hearings did not end up playing very well for Democrats, neither will this one. When you continuously are claiming to be the people who stand for the little guy and who stand up against power and who stand up against oppression, and yet you're running cover for people who are doing a really bad job and taking advantage of people in their positions of power, you look like the hypocrite that you are. And I think long term, history is not going to be kind to them.